My stepson sent a message in the family group chat. Children's Day party for flourishing kids only. You? Just a working man. Disowned. I didn't argue. I didn't offend myself. I didn't even reply. I simply went quiet and moved away. 2 years later, the same people who erased me were scrambling to explain why everything around them was falling apart. Before I tell you how silence became my sharpest weapon and why walking away saved my dignity, do me a small favor. Subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. It helps stories like mine reach the people who need them most. I'm 77 years old now. My name is Arthur Coleman, and for most of my life, I believed that being dependable mattered more than being impressive. I worked with my hands. I showed up early. I stayed late. I fixed things that broke. I didn't need applause for it. Or at least, I told myself I didn't. When my wife Helen passed, her son Ethan was already grown, successful on paper, polished, always talking about trajectory and optics. He married Brooke, a woman who measured people the way real estate agents measure square footage, useful only if they added value to her image. From the start, I knew I wasn't her kind of company. I wore steel-toe boots. I smelled like oil some days. I worked at Riverbend Industrial Plant, the same place my father worked before me, and I was proud of it. Ethan tolerated me. Brooke barely did. For a while, it was manageable. Holidays were civil. Conversations stayed shallow. I fixed the porch light when it flickered, paid for repairs without being asked, kept quiet when Brooke talked over me at the table. I figured that was the price of peace. Then came Children's Day. It was supposed to be lighthearted, one of those excuses families invent to gather and show off. I was finishing a late shift, washing grease from my hands, when my phone buzzed. The family group chat lit up. Ethan's name at the top. He wrote about a party at their place, a celebration for kids who made something of themselves. He tagged cousins, friends, colleagues. Then the line that landed like a hammer wrapped in silk. This is for flourishing kids only. Some paths don't reflect ambition. A second message followed, colder and clearer, like he wanted no confusion. If you chose to stay a working man, don't take this personally. It's just reality. No one objected. Not one person typed my name. Not one said, "Hey, that's too far." Brooke reacted with a clapping emoji. Someone else posted a champagne glass. The chat moved on as if I'd never existed. I stared at the screen longer than I care to admit. Not because I was shocked, but because I finally understood. I wasn't family to them. I was context. Useful when something needed fixing. Embarrassing when appearances mattered. So I did the only thing that made sense. I left the chat, blocked the numbers, put the phone down, ate my dinner in silence. The next morning, I woke before dawn like always, drove to the plant, clocked in. The machines hummed the same way they always had. Men and women half my age nodded hello. Someone joked about the coffee tasting like regret. Life went on. That night I packed, not in anger, not dramatically. I folded my clothes carefully, gathered my documents, took the small wooden box my father left me, the one that still smelled faintly of oil and aftershave. I arranged a modest apartment near the river in Mapleford, close enough to hear water at night. Quiet, clean, mine. I didn't leave a speech. I didn't demand explanations. I left a note on the counter that said, "Only this. I'm stepping away. Don't worry about me." Weeks passed. No one called. That's the part people don't expect. They assume there's a blow-up, a confrontation, a tearful showdown. There wasn't. The absence fit too neatly into their lives. I had already been invisible, so I built something new. I worked, took night courses at North Valley Technical Institute, learning systems, logistics, operations. No announcements, no bragging, just progress. At the plant, I learned every line, every bottleneck, fixed problems before they reached management. When an opportunity came, I took it. Then another. I didn't tell Ethan. I didn't tell Brooke. Why would I? 2 years passed like that. Quietly, productively, peacefully. And then, one afternoon, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. A voicemail followed. The voice on the other end was strained, careful, almost polite. Arthur, it's Ethan. We should talk. I listened once. Then I set the phone face down and went back to work, because by then I already knew something had gone wrong in their perfect, curated world. And whatever it was, they finally realized they couldn't fix it without the man they'd thrown away. The voicemail sat on my phone for 3 days before I deleted it. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted to punish anyone. I deleted it because I'd already made a decision the moment I walked away from that group chat. Silence wasn't a tactic for me. It was a boundary. And once you cross a certain age, you learn that boundaries are the only thing that keeps peace intact. I kept going to work at Riverbend Industrial Plant. Same as always. Same early mornings. Same drive past a river where fog hovered low like it was undecided about leaving. Same locker with my name scratched into the metal. But the difference now was internal. I wasn't carrying the weight of being overlooked anymore. I wasn't waiting for anyone to notice me. The night classes at North Valley Technical Institute became my anchor. Twice a week, after a full shift, I'd change out my uniform, throw on a clean shirt, and sit in classrooms with people young enough to be my grandchildren. They looked at me like I was lost at first. One kid even asked if I was there to pick someone up. I just smiled and said, "Nope, I'm here to learn." And I learned systems optimization, industrial planning, supply chain management. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because understanding how things work has always mattered to me. Machines, people, processes, it's all about flow. And when something breaks, you don't scream at it. You study it. Back home in my little apartment in Mapleford, I lived simply. Coffee in the morning, meals cooked from scratch, evenings by the window, listening to the river and writing notes in an old notebook. Not planned for revenge, just observations. What I felt, what I didn't anymore. There were moments, of course, moments when I'd reach for my phone and almost text Ethan, almost ask why he said what he said, almost demand an explanation. But then I'd remember the silence in that chat, the emojis, the way no one defended me, and the urge passed. At the plant, people started to notice changes. I wasn't just doing my job anymore. I was anticipating problems before they showed up. When a packaging line jammed every Thursday afternoon, I figured out it was a timing issue with the conveyor calibration. Fixed it permanently. When inventory numbers didn't match shipping logs, I traced it back to a software sync error. No one had bothered to question. My supervisor, a man named Carl who'd been there almost as long as I had, pulled me aside one afternoon. "Arthur," he said, scratching his beard, "you ever thought about stepping into a leadership role?" I shrugged. "I already do the work." He laughed. "Yeah, that's why I'm asking." Within months, I was overseeing 2 lines, then 3. Then I was coordinating with logistics, maintenance, and planning. It wasn't flashy. No corner office. But it was responsibility, and I carried it well. Still, I told no one in my family. As far as Ethan and Brooke were concerned, I was still just a working man, and I let them believe it. About a year after I left, I heard through a mutual acquaintance, someone from Helen's side of the family, that things weren't going smoothly for Ethan. His company had gone through restructuring. Titles were shuffled. Promises quietly evaporated. Brooke had stopped posting glossy photos online. I didn't smile at that news. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt detached. Because when you stop orbiting someone else's expectations, their rise or fall stops affecting your balance. Then came the email. It wasn't from Ethan. It was from Brooke. The subject line read, "Can we talk?" I didn't open it right away. Let's sit for a day. Then another. Curiosity eventually won. Not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I wanted clarity. The email was long, carefully worded. She said she hadn't meant for things to come across harshly. She said stress made people say things they regret. She said families should support each other. Not once did she apologize. Not once did she acknowledge what was said, only how it was received. That told me everything. I didn't reply. A week later, Ethan tried again. Another voicemail. This one less controlled. "Arthur, look, Things are complicated right now. We could really use your perspective. Just call me back. Perspective. That was the word that stuck with me. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Perspective. Like I was a consultant they cut loose and now wanted to rehire at a discount. That was when I realized something important. They didn't miss me. They missed what I did. I was a steady one. The problem solver. The man who handled things quietly, so they never had to. And now that things were unraveling, they wanted that stability back, without ever addressing why they discarded it in the first place. At work, life continued to move forward. I finished my certification program. Management called me into a meeting I assumed was routine. It wasn't. They offered me a senior operations role, oversight across departments, better pay, better hours, a voice in decisions that mattered. I accepted without hesitation. That same week, the Mapleford Business Ledger ran a small feature on the plant's modernization efforts. There was a photo of me on the floor, hard hat under my arm, explaining a process to a group of engineers half my age. My name was printed clearly underneath. I didn't share it, didn't frame it. I folded the paper and put it in a drawer. 3 days later, my phone rang again. This time I answered. Ethan's voice was tight, controlled, but underneath it, I could hear strain. I saw the article, he said. Didn't know you were doing all that. I waited. No apology followed. So, he continued, we should probably meet. Clear the air. I leaned back in my chair, looking out over the plant floor where machines moved in steady rhythm, doing exactly what they were built to do. Why now? I asked. There was a pause. Too long. Because, he said finally, things have changed. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Yes, I said, they have. We agreed to meet the following week. Neutral place. Coffee shop halfway between Mapleford and the city. 1 hour. When I hung up, I felt nothing dramatic. No rush of triumph. No dread. Just certainty. Because I already knew that whatever Ethan wanted to say, it wasn't going to give him back what he lost. And he was about to learn that some doors don't slam shut. They simply stop opening. I arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early. Not because I was nervous, but because old habits die hard. When you spend decades punching a clock, you learn to respect time, even when the people you're meeting never respected you. The place was called Harbor and Grind, a quiet spot with wide windows and mismatched wooden tables. Neutral ground. No memories attached. That mattered. I ordered black coffee and sat where I could see the door. Ethan arrived 7 minutes late. He looked older than I remembered. Not in years, but in posture. Shoulders slightly hunched. Tie loosened like he'd stopped caring halfway through the day. He scanned the room, spotted me, hesitated for a fraction of a second, then walked over with a practiced smile. Arthur, he said, extending his hand. I didn't take it. I nodded instead. Sit. That threw him off more than any raised voice would have. He sat down slowly, adjusting himself, glancing around like he expected someone to be watching. We sat in silence for a few seconds. I let it stretch. I'd learned that silence makes people reveal more than words ever could. So he started, clearing his throat. I guess we should talk. You called. I replied. Go ahead. He blinked. I could tell he wasn't used to not being guided. I want to say things came out wrong back then. The message, the group chat, that wasn't meant to. To what? I asked calmly. Disown me? He shifted in his chair. It wasn't about you personally. I took a slow sip of coffee. It always is. Another pause. He looked down at his hands. Brooke didn't mean it the way it sounded. He said finally. She was stressed. We both were. People say things. I almost laughed, but I didn't. Not because it was funny. Because it was predictable. Ethan, I said, keeping my voice even, you sent the message. Not her. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I didn't stop it, he admitted. That's on me. It was the closest thing to accountability I'd heard so far, and even that felt rehearsed. What do you want? I asked. That question landed harder than anything else I could have said. His eyes flicked up, searching my face. Well, he said slowly, things have been complicated. At home, at work. Brooke's business hasn't been doing great. And my company. I held up a hand. No, I said. Don't explain. Answer. He swallowed. We could use your help. There it was. Not I miss you. Not I was wrong. Not I'm sorry. Help. You always were good at fixing things, he added quickly, like that would soften it. I leaned back in my chair and studied him. The same boy I'd watched grow up. The same man who decided my worth based on my job title. And what exactly do you think I'd fix? I asked. He hesitated. Things. Systems. Decisions. You know, you've always been steady. Steady. The word people use when they mean useful but unremarkable. I see, I said. Another silence. He tried again. Mom would have wanted us to stay close. That one stung. Not because it was cruel, but because it was calculated. Helen had been gone for years, and he was still using her name as leverage. Don't, I said quietly. He stopped. I'm not here to be guilt, I continued, and I'm not here to be recruited. He frowned. Recruited? You didn't call to make amends, I said. You called because things are falling apart, and you don't know how to hold them together without me. His jaw tightened. That's not fair. It's accurate. The waitress came by to refill my coffee. I thanked her. Ethan declined. He looked like he'd lost his appetite. I didn't think you'd be this cold, he said. I smiled slightly. This isn't cold. This is calm. You're just not used to me having it. He leaned forward. So that's it? You just disappear for 2 years, build a whole new life, and then act like we're strangers. I met his eyes. You disowned me in front of the family. I just respected the decision. That shut him up. For the first time since he walked in, he looked uncomfortable. Not defensive. Not annoyed. Uncomfortable. People noticed you were gone, he said after a while. They asked questions. And what did you tell them? I asked. He hesitated. That you were doing your own thing. I nodded. At least that part was true. He exhaled sharply. You don't understand what it's been like. I tilted my head. Try me? My reputation took a hit, he admitted. People talk. When someone cuts off family like that, they assume something's wrong. I raised an eyebrow. Interesting. When you cut me off, no one assumed anything was wrong. He flinched. Funny how that works. I added. He sat back, rubbing his temples. Brooke says you're doing really well now. I didn't respond. She thinks maybe if we smooth things over, you could be involved again. Involved how? He avoided my eyes. Advising. Helping us stabilize. I let out a breath, slow and measured. Ethan, I said, I didn't leave to prove anything. I left because I finally understood my place in your life. And what place is that? He asked. I leaned forward just enough for my words to land clearly. The one you remember only when something breaks. His face hardened. So you're punishing us? No, I replied. I'm protecting myself. He stood up abruptly. You're being selfish. I didn't move. I spent decades being selfless, I said. This is what balance looks like. He grabbed his jacket, then hesitated. You think you're better than us now? I looked up at him. No, I said, I think I'm done being less. He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. You'll regret this, he said. I smiled, not smug, not cruel. Just sure. No, I replied. You will. He walked out without another word. I stayed seated, finished my coffee, and watched the door close behind him. I felt no rush of adrenaline, no satisfaction, just relief. That evening, I went home to my apartment by the river, cooked dinner, watched the lights come on across the water, thought about how far I'd come, not upward, but inward. The next morning, my phone buzzed with notification, an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "We need to talk before this gets worse." I didn't open it, because I had a feeling whatever worse meant for them was just the beginning. The email sat unread for 2 full days. I didn't delete it right away. I didn't open it either. I let it sit there like an unopened envelope on a kitchen counter. Visible, intentional, unanswered. At 77, you learn that urgency is often someone else's problem dressed up as yours. By then, my life had settled into a rhythm I protected fiercely. Morning started early, not because I had to, but because I liked the quiet. The river outside my Mapleford apartment moved at its own pace, unconcerned with titles, reputations, or who had fallen from grace. I brewed coffee, read a few pages of whatever book I was halfway through, and drove to work without rushing. At Riverbend Industrial Plant. Things were different now. I wasn't on the floor anymore, but I still walked it every day. I talked to operators, checked systems, listened more than I spoke. When you've earned your authority the hard way, you don't need to remind people you have it. The modernization project I'd helped design was finally complete. Output was up. Waste was down. Injuries had dropped sharply. The board was happy. Corporates and a few stiff congratulations that meant more in numbers than words. I didn't celebrate. I never had. That afternoon, my assistant poked her head into my office. "Arthur, there's a call holding for you. Says it's family." I didn't look up from my screen. "Did they give a name?" She hesitated. "Ethan Coleman." I closed the file I was reviewing and leaned back. "No appointment," I said. "No," she replied. "Then tell him I'm unavailable." She nodded and disappeared. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text this time. "Unknown number. You don't have to shut us out like this. We're still family." I stared at the words, feeling nothing. No spike of anger. No tightening in my chest. Just distance. I typed one line back. "You decided we weren't." Then I blocked the number. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Over the next week, the attempts came from every angle. An email forwarded through an old family friend. A voicemail from a cousin I barely spoke to anymore. Even a handwritten note left with building security at Crestline Corporate Center, addressed simply to Arthur. I didn't respond to any of it. What I didn't know, what they didn't realize I already suspected, was that Ethan's situation had deteriorated far faster than he let on in that cafe. Brooks' business had collapsed quietly, the way fragile things often do when they're propped up by image instead of substance. Investors pulled out. Credit tightened. The lifestyle they curated online stopped matching reality. Ethan's company followed soon after. A merger. Redundancies. Restructuring. The word people use when accountability is about to land somewhere. He lost his position. Not demoted. Not reassigned. Gone. And when that happened, the story they told themselves finally broke. Because the man they dismissed, the working man they'd erased, was now the one name people kept mentioning when things had been running smoothly in Mapleford's biggest operation. That's when desperation replaces pride. The day security called my office was unseasonably warm. Late afternoon sunlight cut through the glass, turning the dust in the air golden. "Mr. Coleman," the guard said, voice professional but cautious. "There's a woman downstairs asking to see you. Says she's your daughter-in-law." I didn't need to ask which one. "Does she have an appointment?" I asked. "No, sir." "Then she can leave." A pause. "She's refusing. Says she just wants 5 minutes." I stood and walked to the window. 6 floors down near the entrance, I saw her, Brooke, perfect posture gone, designer coat wrinkled, arms crossed tightly like she was holding herself together by force. She looked smaller than I remembered. "She can wait," I said, "but she won't be coming up." Another pause. Then, understood. I watched from above as security approached her, spoke calmly, gestured toward the doors. She shook her head at first, said something I couldn't hear. Then something changed. Her shoulders dropped. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand. After a few more words, she turned and walked out. I sat back down at my desk and opened a file I'd been working on. That evening, my phone rang again. A voicemail this time. Her voice was different from the confident, cutting tone I remembered. It was thin, strained. "Arthur, please. I know we didn't start off right. I know things were said. But Ethan isn't doing well. He needs guidance. Stability. You always knew how to hold things together. I'm asking you, please. I listened to the message once. Then I deleted it. Not because I lack compassion, but because compassion without accountability is just another way to be used. 2 days later, Ethan showed up in person. This time, not at work. At my apartment.